Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight we're going to have Know Your Rights, a little presentation, and also be able to answer questions. Hopefully, lots of questions coming in. Councilwoman Diaz and I are both here hosting this event, so it's very fun for us to have the county and the city working together collectively to make sure that Las Vegas is the best city for the immigrant community. With that, I'll turn it over to Councilwoman Diaz.
Thank you, Commissioner Segerblom. Thank you for hosting this very important Know Your Rights town hall. It is very, very important for our community to be informed and educated about what their rights are in different circumstances, scenarios, and I'm just pleased to be here amongst the ranks of Public Defender's Office and the UNLV Immigration Clinic, and of course Commissioner Segerblom, who always is supportive of our communities. Super important things we're going to be talking about today: the restoration of voting rights, which was passed by our Nevada State Legislature in 2019. Rights if you're stopped by law enforcement. So what should you do if you get pulled over, and what should you say? And lastly, immigration rights, and what should our community know about just different angles and different things that we have to always be present and knowing about to just be on the best foot moving forward in any situation we are. So again, I'm super excited that we're having this, and thank you again, Commissioner Segerblom.
Thank you. So the program will go as follows. First, we'll start with our Clark County Public Defender, Darren Imlay, who will talk to you about the restoration of voting rights and what happens if you're arrested or stopped by law enforcement. And then we'll go to Professor Kagan from UNLV and from the Bernstein Center, who will talk about immigration issues. Each speaker will speak for about 15 minutes. If you're watching us online, you can submit questions, so please do that in writing. And we'll also give you phone numbers and things to contact. So if you have further questions, you'll know how to reach. So with that, we'll start with Darren Imlay, who's the Clark County Public Defender. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here, the invitation from Councilwoman Diaz and Commissioner Segerblom. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Again, my name is Darren Imlay. I am the Public Defender of Clark County. And a little bit about myself and our office. I've been in this position for almost 2.5 years now when I was appointed by the county commissioners. I've worked in the Public Defender's Office for almost 25 years now and held a number of different positions within the Public Defender's Office, from running the juvenile division to team chief and to regular track deputy, just handling regular felony cases, misdemeanor cases. Our office, the Public Defender's Office, handles all the criminal cases in Clark County for the indigent. So we handle about 25,000 cases every year. We also have about 120 attorneys in our office, and we handle everything from the 10-year-old getting arrested on a delinquent matter in juvenile court to the capital murder cases, death penalty cases. And our office is broke up into a number of teams that handle homicide cases, sex assault cases, domestic violence cases, DUI cases. And so we handle all those types of cases, including mental health issues. We have attorneys that handle that as well. Some of the questions that we've been asked are, what do you do when you're stopped by a police officer? And the best advice that we can give you is remain calm. And I know that's a stupid thing really to say, because as I'm driving along, even having done this for 25 years, if I see the lights go on, I'm not admitting anything that I ever got stopped, but if I see the lights go on behind me, I get nervous. And the first thing I want to do is start talking when the police officer comes up, but the first thing you need to do is try to remain calm. You have to identify yourself. That's one of the requirements in the state of Nevada. If you're driving the car, you have to provide your driver's license. But after that, you don't need to answer any other questions. If the police officer is asking you questions, one of the things you may want to ask is, am I free to leave? If the answer is no, you are not free to leave, then your next statement should always be, I want to talk to my attorney. if all else fails, if you don't know what to say, if you don't know the questions that are being asked, that always needs to be your response to everything is, I want to speak to my attorney. Even if you don't have an attorney, I want to speak to an attorney. Don't ask the question, do I need to speak to an attorney? You say, I want to speak to my attorney. Because you don't have to answer any other questions other than identify yourself. One of the other big things that a lot of questions we get all the time is, do I need to consent to someone the police officer searching my car if I'm stopped? And again, the answer is no. You don't have to consent. The police officer may ask you, can I search your car? The simple answer is no. No. They can get a search warrant, or there's other reasons they could search the car, but you don't need to give consent for the police officer to search your car. One of the questions that Councilwoman Diaz brought up was restoration of voter rights. This just passed the last legislative session, so beginning on July 1st of last year. If you have a prior conviction, whether it's a misdemeanor conviction or a felony conviction, you now have the right to vote in the state of Nevada. And those rights are restored automatically. There's nothing unusual that you have to do. As long as you are out of custody, you have the right to vote. You still have to go and register to vote, but you have the right to vote. That's restored automatically. One of the things that we do in my office is we've done a lot of outreach. When we did a voter registration to try to inform people that have prior records that they have that right. We had some people come that could register people to vote. I must say I was a little disappointed that there wasn't a greater turnout and greater interest, but you have that right, you should take advantage of that right. It's been restored. I don't know if there's any other particular questions at this time.
Let's see. I think there may be, I'm not sure if we're going to give time for those that are following along to maybe type their questions in if there are any. I think a question that many that are watching this and that are here are probably thinking is, what does the restoration of voting rights look like for individuals who have a misdemeanor that they served versus a felony?
It looks exactly the same for them as it does for me. All I have to do is go register. All they have to do is go register. There's nothing different they have to do as long as they're out of custody. It doesn't matter whether it's a misdemeanor or whether it's a felony charge that you have on your record. As long as you're out of custody, then you are allowed to register to vote and you're allowed to vote. Along some of the other things that we've been talking about, since there's a lot of immigration questions that have been coming up. In our office, one of the things that we do is because criminal matters overlap into immigration matters tremendously. And so we have an attorney that we've had in our office for the past 8 years that has extensive immigration experience. And so she provides counsel to the attorneys within our office to help us when we are negotiating a case, when we're handling a case with someone that is a non-citizen, to provide us with assistance, because it's confusing. It's incredibly difficult. And we also just hired one that started on Monday that has extensive immigration experience as well that's going to help with that. But if you are arrested or if you're in custody and you're a non-citizen, that is one of the first things that you need to tell your attorney, because it can have a tremendous impact on how you handle your criminal case. Because in your criminal case, we may be able to change some of the wording. It will probably depend on a negotiation, how we try to resolve your case, your immigration status. Because believe it or not, sometimes a simple misdemeanor charge, if the phraseology is wrong, if the words are wrong as to what you're pleading to, that could lead to removal proceedings. And it's very important that you let your attorney know, whether it's your criminal defense attorney, what your status is if you're a non-citizen.
Darren, what about warrants? What do people know? How can they find out if they have a warrant out for themselves? And then what happens if you're stopped for a warrant, if it's a traffic or a criminal warrant?
Well, one of the first thing that you should do is if you get a citation, if you have a traffic ticket, show up to court. Make sure you show up to court. Even if you can't pay the entire fine amount, show up, try to take something. Try to take $20, $25, because just showing up to court with that little bit of money is going to, in all likelihood, allow the judge to continue the case and continue to allow you to make payments as you go along. If you skip court because you don't have the full amount, or you just think I forget about it or don't want to show up and then warrant's issued, if you get stopped, chances are you're going to be arrested, and then the fines mount. If you have a warrant that's outstanding, if it's a traffic ticket, then we can provide you some information. You need to find out, is it in Henderson Municipal Court, Henderson Justice Court, Las Vegas Municipal Court, Las Vegas Justice Court. It can be a different jurisdiction. And then you'd be able to contact them, put the case on calendar, or pay the fine in full on a traffic ticket. If it's a misdemeanor or a felony warrant that you have, if you have an attorney, reach out to the attorney. Have them put the case on calendar for you. You shouldn't be doing that yourself. If my office represents you, please contact our office to put the case on calendar, because many times we can advise you as to some of the things that you need to do to minimize the risk of being taken into custody if you show up in court. And so it's important to contact your attorney if you have one. If it's a traffic ticket and you don't have an attorney and you can't pay for the fine in full, then you need to contact the appropriate jurisdiction, the appropriate city court, and put it on calendar. And I would strongly recommend you take some money into court to show the judge your good faith effort in paying the fine.
Another question here from Facebook. If you're on parole or probation, are you allowed to register to vote?
Yes, as long as you're out of custody. As long as you're not in prison, you are allowed to vote, and as long as you register.
And what if you're in county jail?
Well, same thing. If you're in custody, then you're not going to be eligible to vote. Once you get out of custody, you can register and vote.
Can you explain when their voter rights are taken away to, I guess, understand when I have to re-register? So for example, if I don't pay a traffic ticket, it escalates to a bench warrant, I land in one of the municipal jails. At that point, are my voting rights revoked because I had an outstanding bench warrant? And do I have to then worry about re-registering? Or can you spell out at what point are my voting rights revoked? And then at what point then do I have to seek out restoring them once I fulfill my sentence? I think it's important to clarify so that people aren't confused.
On the misdemeanor conviction, in all likelihood, you're not going to have to register at all. If you were registered prior to having a felony conviction and you went to prison for a substantial period of time, once you were released from prison, you would want to go back to the election department to re-register.
What about just the right to a public defender? If I'm an immigrant, do I have a right to a public defender? What's the status there?
If you are facing jail time, so if you go to court, whether it's a misdemeanor or whether it's a felony charge, if the state is seeking jail time or suspended jail time, then you're entitled to an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney, then an attorney will be appointed to you. So if it's in justice courts, then my office will be appointed to represent you. We don't make that determination. The judge makes the determination based on your indigency. How much money do you make? So if you can't afford an attorney, our office will be appointed. We'll represent you throughout the criminal case from start to finish.
All right, let's go ahead now and turn over to Professor Kagan and talk a little bit about immigration.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Councilwoman Diaz and Commissioner Segerblom for organizing this. My name's Mike Kagan. I teach immigration law at the UNLV Boyd School of Law, and I direct the UNLV Immigration Clinic. Let me start before addressing some issues that come up often and that I want people to know about. Just let people know a little bit about what we offer at the Immigration Clinic. We have, our clinic is part of the law school and it's part of teaching law students, but it's also a service to the community that we're a part of. And we have currently 2 attorneys in addition to myself, and by this fall we'll have 3, again, which is our normal size right now. And we offer services right now in 2 main areas. One of them is unaccompanied children who've recently come over to, across the border, and some not so recently, usually fleeing from violence. And we have a program to represent them. Usually they have come to Las Vegas because they have family here and are living with family here. But they also have cases in immigration court facing deportation, and so we defend those kids. And the other program that I really would like the public to know about is called University Legal Services. We have an attorney who will offer immigration legal assistance to any student, staff member, or their families at UNLV or the College of Southern Nevada. So if someone is taking classes at College of Southern Nevada and their mother has an immigration issue, you can make an appointment online on our website to get at least some advice to start with, and then we'll take it from there. We'll see what the best thing to do after that is. So that's something I definitely want people to know about. We also have in the past, and will again later this year, had an attorney who represents people detained by ICE. And that's an area, I'm going to come back to that in a moment, where hopefully we can expand our resources over time, not just with us, but in the community. So I wanted to try to address a few things, just picking up on what Darren talked about in terms of people facing criminal charges. And I'm going to focus on people who are being also prosecuted by the government, but in this case by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the federal government seeking their removal. These are cases in immigration court. People will often say, I have a case in immigration court. The technical term is a removal case. Removal is the legal term for deportation. So I'll also just say deportation case. Immigration court is, I often say, misnamed. It's not, that court is not about immigration, it's about deportation. People who have cases in immigration court, the federal government is trying to remove them from the United States. And they have a right to counsel. But unfortunately, unlike people facing criminal charges and jail time in the normal criminal system, they have a right to counsel, but the government does not normally pay for their counsel, and that's a problem we're trying to wrestle with. Now, we get asked a lot to give advice about what happens if ICE comes to my house, or what happens if ICE comes to where I work or finds me on the street. Let me give a quick piece of advice about that, and then I want to move on. I'll tell you why I want to move on to other questions. If ICE comes to your house, you do not have to let them in. You can ask if they have a warrant. You could do this, by the way, with regular police as well. In the case of ICE, they nearly never have an actual warrant to enter the house. It's not part of the normal way that ICE operates. You can ask them to slip their warrant under the door to look at it. It may say the word warrant at the top, but look at who signed it. If it is signed only by an immigration officer, it is not a warrant, and you do not need to let them into your house. A true warrant is signed by a judge. Now, if ICE officers encounter you or anyone else where you work, on the street, again, you can give your name, but you don't need to answer any of their other questions. Even if they say, we're trying to help you to sort out your immigration status, ICE, their role is deporting people. So even if they're acting like they're trying to help, you don't have to, and you're not well advised to answer their questions. Even innocent questions, innocent sounding questions like, where were you born? If the answer is, I was born in a foreign country, that alone might be the evidence that's used to deport you. We have cases, clients in immigration court where the entire evidence against them that's being used to try to remove them from their families, from the United States, is their own answers given to ICE officers, where they're trying to be cooperative and honest. It's better off to say, I don't want to talk to you, or I want to talk to a lawyer, as Darren said. You do not have to answer their questions, and very rarely will you ever benefit from answering their questions. Now, I want to address a more common situation. It's pretty rare, actually, in Las Vegas for people to be encountered directly by ICE officers, even though it's what people fear. But 80% of the people who are put into deportation proceedings here in Las Vegas, here in Clark County, are not directly arrested by ICE. They're directly arrested by our local police. It could be on something very small, like an unpaid traffic ticket, or it could be on something more serious. But most people who end up in the deportation system start by being booked into one of our local jails. And that's where they enter the deportation system. So if someone is, or a member of your family or yourself, if you're booked into the jail, and if you're not a U.S. citizen, it's extremely important, first of all, if you encounter an immigration officer in the jail, again, you do not have to answer their questions, and you shouldn't. Don't even tell them where you were born. You will get, as Darren explained, a lawyer should be appointed for you on the criminal case, on whatever led to you being arrested. Work with that person and tell that lawyer immediately, I'm not a U.S. citizen and I'm worried about my immigration situation as well as the criminal case. A good criminal defense lawyer, actually it's a constitutional right to get advice on how the criminal case will affect your immigration status, and a good lawyer will work with you on that, or will try to get advice from someone else if they don't know on how to help you with that. And we're lucky with the Clark County Public Defender, they have a lawyer that their lawyers can go to for advice about those issues. If you go to hire a private attorney or to hire one for your family member, ask them, can you make sure to help them with the impact on the immigration system with the criminal case? If the lawyer says, I don't know anything about immigration or I can't work with that, hire a different lawyer. Or don't hire a private lawyer at all if you qualify for the public defender. So that's extremely important. For non-citizens, whether undocumented or legal permanent resident, a criminal case can have much worse consequences than it would for me, for better or for worse. And you need to bring that up with a lawyer as soon as possible. Now, what happens if you or someone you know is in deportation proceedings, if they have a case in immigration court? The most important thing someone can do is get good legal assistance. Now, here, I am apologetic because it's a fact. The best thing that you can do is have a lawyer. The data is overwhelming. Without a lawyer, most people have nearly no chance of avoiding deportation and are often end up deported very quickly. With a lawyer, there are no guarantees. Lawyers are not miracle workers, but with a lawyer, people have a very good chance often of staying in the country, staying with their families. But, and unfortunately, unlike in the criminal system, there is no public defender. So the government won't pay for a lawyer for people. And I realize that's a big problem because it's expensive and people will struggle to get legal assistance, and we're trying to work on that problem, but that's a gap, undoubtedly. Nevertheless, the biggest thing you can do to help a family member who's been detained by ICE or is facing a deportation case is get them a lawyer. And the most important thing about getting a lawyer is not someone who promises to do miracles for them in court. I can apply for this for you, I can get that for you. The first thing actually is not even to go to court, but to get good advice, privately. Because some people facing a deportation case, if they get good advice, can successfully fight the deportation case, can find a way to stay in the country legally, can fix the problem that's putting them in the deportation case. Other people, frankly, the best immigration lawyer in the country would not be able to keep them here. Unfortunately, there are lawyers who will unfortunately sell a product rather than really help someone. For thousands of dollars, I will file this application for you, and it sounds great. And sometimes it is for some people, and for other people, it's frankly wasted money. So the biggest thing is to get advice first, not big promises, but advice, good, sober advice. A good lawyer will tell you good news and will tell you bad news. Things you may not want to hear, because the immigration system can be quite cruel and quite irrational. But it's important to ask an attorney, not just what can I file, but what are my realistic chances of succeeding? And then how much will that cost me? Then when you hire an attorney and find one who will tell you the bad news as well as the good news, that's the attorney you want to hire. You want to make sure you know what you're hiring the lawyer for. This is confusing because immigration operates very differently from even other parts of the American legal system. So one of the things that we commonly hear in our office that people are confused by is that they hired a lawyer to help get them out of detention, to help them apply for bond. And then they're surprised, why did that lawyer not show up at my hearing about my deportation? This is why it's very important to be very clear with a lawyer, what am I paying for you for? What are you providing me? The reason this is confusing is that in immigration court, applying for a bond for a person who is detained is considered separate from the removal case, from the deportation case. And lawyers will sometimes can be hired for both, but are often hired just for one or the other. But we hear this all the time, people who didn't understand that they were hiring the lawyer only for the bond case. This is confusing. It confused me earlier in my career because normally, for example, if I were arrested by Las Vegas Metro and accused of a crime, and I was appointed Darren to represent me from the public defender, he would represent me on the bond and on the criminal case. Normally they're together, and honestly that would be more logical, but that's not how the immigration court system works. So it's very important to be really explicit with the lawyer, what am I hiring you for? And I really do recommend paying a lawyer a small fee just for good advice. It's well worth it. Many people doubt that. Why pay for a lawyer just to talk to me, not to do anything? Well, because before you decide whether it's worth hiring a lawyer to do something, you need to get good advice about your situation and what your options are. The last thing I want to cover is probably the most dangerous situation, the most dangerous common situation for people in our community, which is people who have old removal orders. This is extremely common and very problematic. Many people who we work with, some members of our families, have old removal orders. They can be years old, more than 10 years old. Unfortunately, old deportation orders never expire. And people may know they have an old removal order that the government, for whatever reason, never carried out. And in other cases, people may not even know that for sure. So sometimes people went to immigration court, but they weren't sure what happened with the case. Unfortunately, that often is a signal to me as a lawyer there's likely a removal order against that person. In other cases, people really just don't know what happened. Papers were sent to the wrong address. Sometimes people were given papers when they crossed the border and they didn't understand them. If you think that this is your situation or someone in your family situation, it's a very good idea to go to a lawyer and yes, to possibly pay them a small fee to just figure out what your situation is and if anything can be done about it. Because for people with these old removal orders, that is a sword hanging over their heads. And they could go years without it having any impact on their life. But if they ever encounter the criminal justice system or ICE, it's likely to be brought up and it can lead to their deportation very, very quickly. And it will be very difficult to get them a lawyer quickly or to intervene to stop that quickly. So if you think that this might be your situation, it's a good idea to go to a lawyer early before it's a problem. Sometimes a lawyer might be able to do something, help you do something about it, to reopen the case. Sometimes they might only give you advice, just so at least you know where you stand. But that's a very important thing to wrestle with early on. I don't remember if it was mentioned or not, but because of what I discussed, the way people enter the deportation system, I can't emphasize enough that if you have, say, a traffic ticket, very, very important to deal with it, to not let it go unpaid in court or unaddressed in court. You don't want if you're an immigrant, you really don't want that bench warrant, because it's doubly dangerous for someone who is undocumented than for everybody else, unfortunately. So I'll stop with that, and I know there are likely to be questions.
So yes, the first question is, Professor Kagan, can you shed light on what's the best way to get in contact with the UNLV Immigration Clinic? If they are an employee of UNLVCSN or a student and have family members in need of advice, how can they get in contact with you?
The best way for people who have a connection to UNLV or College of Southern Nevada is to make an appointment online. If you just Google UNLV Immigration Clinic, you'll find our website, and there's a link to make an appointment online with an attorney. And we do those appointments as much as possible still remotely. That might change later this year, but to start with, you don't have to come in person. You can do it on Zoom, but you can make the appointment online on our website.
And just to follow up, I assume Nevada State College applies too or not?
Unfortunately, not Nevada State College yet. I have plans. I would like to expand the service to them, but we have only one attorney right now doing that work for both, so we would need to hire an additional attorney or two.
And there's also a phone number in case the internet is not as friendly for some folks.
895-2080 is the phone number for the Immigration Clinic, and there's actually, I wish I'd said this in the Spanish section as well. There's a wider clinical law program beyond immigration at the law school. The Immigration Clinic is the largest, but we also have a misdemeanor clinic that provides extremely vigorous representation for people who are not facing jail time, so therefore they don't get the public defender. And we have a policing and protest clinic. We have an investor protection clinic, which is really interesting, and a mediation clinic. I'm probably going to do injustice to one of my colleagues, an education advocacy clinic for people whose kids have special education needs in school. I hope I've gotten them all, so I'll hear about it later, whichever one I forgot. But that's that 895-2080.
Okay, and there's another question about how do you start the process of finding a good immigration lawyer, and are there other ways to tell if a lawyer is reputable?
First of all, obviously, do start to make sure that they are a licensed attorney, not a notario. That is the first step. Go to if you know another attorney, not everyone does, that's a good place. Attorneys know other good attorneys, and they know which ones to avoid. If you know your family member who had success with an attorney, it's a good sign, but every case is different. When meeting an attorney, ask specific questions. Remember that attorneys you don't want to go to might seem like a salesman, and they might be promising a lot. That's not always a good sign. Ask hard questions and be very specific. Remember, you're hiring this person to work for you. In the same way, if you were hiring someone to remodel your house, you'd ask them hard questions about what they're going to do and what they can't do. Ask them what could go wrong in your case. Ask them for a realistic expectation. If they say, I could file this application for you, ask, well, could the application be denied? Why might it be denied? If the person is reluctant to tell you bad news, say, thank you very much, I appreciate you talking to me, and find somebody else.
Going back to Darren, so what about the public defender? How does someone get a public defender?
If you're in custody and you'll appear in court at the initial arraignment, Then if you're indigent, if you're not able to afford an attorney, then the judge will make that determination and appoint our office. If you're out of custody and you go to court for your first initial appearance as well, you'll have to fill out some paperwork to show what your financial status is, and then the judge, again, will make the determination as to whether or not you qualify for the public defender's office, and then we would be appointed at that point.
What if I had a bench warrant for a felony and wanted to turn myself in? Or can I come to you and have you go with me?
Before you turn yourself in or show up on the jail doorstep, please contact our office so we can at least give you some information. A lot of times, it's as simple as we may be able to put your case on calendar, even though we don't represent you as a friend of the court. For appointment of counsel, we do things like that. If you have an attorney or you had an attorney in a particular case where the warrant was issued, contact that attorney. But before you just show up in court or put yourself on calendar, contact our office to at least get some general information so we can direct you through the process so you're not just walking yourself into court, getting arrested in court when it wasn't necessary.
Does your office help with sealing the records?
We do not. Nevada Legal Services can help with that, but we do not do that. It's a civil matter, and we're precluded from handling civil cases. We can give you some information on how to do it. It's not an easy process, but we can at least point you in the right direction.
And how about just if you have different criminal things on your record, getting those, I guess, be like a warrant, all the warrants going in and having some type of a process where we can find out what warrants are out there. Can you help with that?
Absolutely. If you contact our office, we can give you a lot of information about your particular situation. Some of the things that we've done in the past is we've had a bench warrant quashing event to help people out. They were able to register. We were able to have judges that volunteered their time, district attorneys that volunteered their time, and we quashed over 3,000 warrants in one day to help people, because the snowball effect, if you have a warrant out there, not only for immigration purposes, but even for a U.S. citizen. You get arrested for a small traffic ticket, you go to jail for a couple days, you may end up losing your job, your apartment, all kinds of things. So it's important, if you think you have a warrant, then you can contact our office and we can provide that information to you. We can give you some direction, even if it's not in a justice court that we represent somebody normally in. If it's a municipal court, we can at least point you in the right direction, give you some contact information so that you can reach out to them to put your case on calendar. Just as Professor Kagan said, the most important thing is to show up to court, pay the fine if you can pay it. If you can even make a small payment, do that to avoid having the warrant issued so that you don't get stopped and arrested.
Any other questions or any comments you want to make in general? I know there's a lot of stuff going on in Carson City. Anything particularly come to your mind?
There's a lot of things.
That's a loaded question.
There is so much going on right now. There are so many bills in front of the legislators. That's one thing, is get involved. You mentioned sealing records. There's a bill right now in front of the legislators to make the process easier. There's immigration bills that are in front of the legislatures right now that would help those that are non-citizens know their rights, know information. There's things that help juveniles, sealing records of when you were a juvenile, to have those things sealed automatically. There's so many things out there. Be involved. Reach out to your legislator. Don't be afraid to testify on those things, because they have a tremendous impact on each and every one of us. And there's a lot of them out there. Some of them are very, very bad. And you need to be aware of those things and be involved and active with those.
I know one of the issues is converting traffic tickets to civil. How would that impact people?
That would make a big difference, because then just the simple fact of being arrested for an outstanding warrant, the impact again is huge. And so, plus it snowballs again, because you may have a fine of $100 and it goes into warrant. They're going to add a fee on top of that, and all of a sudden your $100 fine, original fine, has doubled or tripled. And you just get further and further behind. But because it's a criminal matter, you can be arrested on it if there's a warrant outstanding.
And Professor Kagan, what about you? Anything in the legislature that you're watching?
Oh, there's a lot that we're watching. Yes. There's a lot. Let me. I'm going to sidestep. I think it's on. Yeah. I'm going to sidestep the legislature question, and I want to also highlight that the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada offers regular classes about immigration issues, and we also have this as part of the community partnership with the law school's community law program. You can, if you want to learn about whether you or a member of your family might be eligible for a visa to legalize your status, LACSN offers classes on that on a regular schedule. If you have a family member who is in deportation proceedings, the issues that I talked about today, we have a regular class offered in English and in Spanish. They have been online, and I know that's difficult for people, and hopefully that won't be forever, but I want to let people know about that too. And also decriminalize traffic tickets.
All right, well, I don't hear any further questions, so I guess we can end a little early, but I just want to say that we have, between the city and the county, we want to really work together to make this process work, to encourage people to come forward. We're going to provide more resources going forward, but it's so important that the justice system focus on true criminals and try to avoid worrying about people that at the lower level, the traffic tickets and things like that, and especially those warrants, which really can bring you into jail. And once you're into jail, then you're subject to deportation.
Commissioner, if I can add something.
Yes, please.
I mentioned the bench warrant quashing event that we had. We do a number of events. COVID obviously has thrown a wrench in many of those things. But one of the things we noticed when we had our bench warrant quashing event, as I mentioned, we quashed over 3,000 warrants. But I know there is a lot of confusion and fear from those people in the community that are not citizens of showing up to events like that. They were underrepresented tremendously at our bench warrant quashing event. And so we are going to have more of these once COVID is in our rearview mirror. And we'd want you to look for those. If you have warrants, traffic warrants, misdemeanor warrants, look for the events, go to our website. And if you have any questions or concerns about whether it's a legitimate event, please contact our office. Get registered, come down. We can help you quash the warrant so that you can get on with your life and don't have to drive around with that fear.
And Darren, just so folks understand, what is to quash a warrant? Because we hear all of this legalese that doesn't always translate in our head. So what do you do when you quash a warrant?
It takes it away. And so and a lot of times we were able to completely close your case completely. If nothing else, worst case scenario, the warrant will be taken away and you'll be given future court dates so you can continue to make the payments towards your fine, but it takes the warrant away so you don't have to worry about that right now and get on with your life.
It's super important to know that the stress about being pulled over any second and not having address. That's why it's so important for any citations, any traffic tickets. I know that our hardworking people sometimes are intimidated by the sums that they see on those citations and say, I'm just barely making ends meet. I can barely put a roof over my head and pay the food on my table. What do you mean I have to pay upwards of $500 for this citation? But really come through to the courts, try to make a court appearance before a judge. It can get pled down. It could be negotiated. They can put you on a payment plan. They just need to see a good faith effort from us until maybe we resolve it through the legislature. But right now, the system is the system, and let's just not put ourselves in jeopardy, especially those of us whose status is still in the air or who need to seek status down the road. You don't want to have any of this in your record or kind of just hanging over you like a dark cloud. We really want to make sure that you are in the best place to take advantage of making sure that when there is a path forward for you and you can fix or change your status, that you can do so without having to worry about all these landmines that we hit in the past. So that's basically why we wanted to have this community town hall and this conversation, is to educate, to inform our community, to let them know that we can get through this. Sometimes it's complicated and wonky and hard, and we need maybe public defenders or the UNLV Immigration Clinic to help us get through it, but we can if we seek the right sources of information and we stay on top of it. So that's all I have. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate the folks that came in person to our town hall, but most importantly to our subject experts, Darren Emle from the Public Defender's Office and Professor Kagan from UNLV Immigration Clinic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation.